Welcome to the Tech Sales Funnels podcast, where we dive deep and answer the ultimate question, how did you hack into tech sales? Each week, we bring you inspiring stories, proven strategies, and insider tips from top performers who've cracked the code to break into tech sales and thrive. Whether you're just starting out, making a career pivot, or ready to level up, this is your go-to space for actionable advice and real-world success stories. Let's crack the code together, because hacking into tech sales isn't just a dream, it's your next move. Now with your host, the founder of Tech Sales Funnels and the tech sales hacker himself, Dayvisson Da Silva.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tech Sales Funnel podcast. This is Dayvisson Da Silva. I'm your host today, your tech sales hacker. Today we have Dallin Hernandez. He is an amazing career coach. He does have his own company. He helps a lot of people transition to tech sales. I met him on LinkedIn. We are from the same school, alumni school, BYU, Idaho, and he's doing some amazing work in helping people transition to tech sales, especially those who are, the first job in sales, coming out of college, or who wants to be an SDR, account executive. He's going to talk a little bit more about it. But let me bring him into the stage, and he's going to introduce himself, and we're going to take from there. Hello, Dallin. Welcome.
Hey, how are you?
Welcome to the Tech Sales Fun podcast.
Yeah,
Super excited to have you
Thanks,
here. Can you hear just fine, right? Awesome.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep.
Perfect. I just made a quick introduction, and then we came from the same school. I saw you on LinkedIn, and you're doing some amazing job helping people transition to tech sales. You have your own business now, your own company. So super excited to hear from you today. The goal of this podcast is give people hope and ideas, tips and tricks, how they can transition to tech sales. So before we get into the question of the podcast, which is how did you hack into tech sales? Can you tell us a little bit more about who you are and just a high level, what are you currently doing?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So a little bit about myself. So I was born in Boise, Idaho. I grew up in Meridian. So born and raised in Idaho. And then I ended up attending Brigham Young University, Idaho. And it's awesome to connect with another alum there. I'm with you. And yeah, I studied business management, did an emphasis in marketing, and it was really in college where I got into sales, and my very first sales role was doing door-to-door. And so really kind of got into the industry of just sales in general, but as business to consumer. And I liked it. It was actually a really cool opportunity. I felt like I did well and ended up actually achieving some really cool milestones there. And then after college, after I graduated, I was pretty passionate about the auto industry and business. And so I wanted to transition into a company where I could kind of marry those two together. So I worked for Toyota Corporation. I worked as an analyst there, did some field sales work for them. And during my time there, I was like, man, I just really miss being like a direct selling role. So from there, I transitioned industries. I went into real estate funding for investors, and I sold like mortgage notes, private mortgage notes to like real estate investors. Did that for about a year, did really well there as well. Which is really cool. But then I had a bunch of friends actually working in tech and working in tech sales. And so started just chatting with them, connecting with them. Long story short, transitioned into tech sales where I'm at now. And I'll go more in depth with that in just a second. But I worked at a startup for about 6 months and then transitioned to a bigger tech company and worked there for about 2 years. And now I'm actually just kind of running my own hustle here and side hustle of just starting a consulting and coaching career business to help people get into tech sales now. So that's kind of like a high level overview of my background and a little bit about myself.
Nice. So you went from not knowing anything about tech sales all the way to actually now helping people get into tech sales. So it must be good, everyone. Keep listening to this. And that's one of the goals here. The podcast is really to inspire people to get into tech sales. A little bit of a So you mentioned you did some door-to-door knocking, right? So that was that your like a very, very first kind of sales job?
Yeah, that was. Yeah. So that was like my first introduction to sales. And I almost didn't get into sales because I thought that it was pretty like scammy, like pretty slimy. I thought you had to like lie to like make sales. And so I almost didn't do sales at all. And then I had a friend talk me into it and just, hey, try it out. Like it's going to pay for your, schooling, kind of like pay for your tuition and stuff like that. I was like, all right, I'll kind of give it a shot. And my first summer, I ended up becoming like the top rep on my team, which was pretty
Nice.
cool. And then after that, I was like, yeah, like I love sales, I love business, I love like building revenue, I love like scaling, scaling business for our company. And so that's where I kind of fell in love with business, marketing, sales, and from there, yeah, I've been in the industry since pretty much.
Nice, nice. So I did sell during college as well. That's how I paid for my tuition and graduated debt free because of the
Nice.
door to door knocking. And a lot of people start, actually knocking doors and getting all the experience. So thanks so much for sharing that. Um, can we transition now to your very, 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 very first job in tech sales? You mentioned that a couple of friends were in tech sales already, and how that conversation happened. Can you walk us through the journey of how did you get your job, the actual job?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So let me kind of break that down for you. So when I was working in that selling role, selling, mortgage notes to investors, I just saw a bunch of friends working in tech. And the thing that kind of got me interested was that it provided a lot of flexibility, a lot of
Mm,
autonomy. And on top of all that, the comp packages were actually pretty good and they're pretty comparable to what I was already making. And they're just closer to family. So that was kind of like a no brainer for us. And so I just
mm,
started just started the initial steps of general networking. And really what that meant was just kind of calling up some people I knew and started talking with them about it. And then after that, I was like, yeah, like this is awesome. Like this sounds like a really cool opportunity. I'm just going to go all in with it. And so the cool thing about my story is that I didn't really have like tech sales industry experience, but I had sales experience, which I
mhm,
feel like a lot of people do, right? Everyone has some sort of like sales experience. It's just a matter of like crafting that to like just fit into like another industry. And so what I initially did was the first thing was I just kind of obtained some clarity and really kind of dialed in like 5 to 7 companies I was interested in working for in the specific area I wanted to live. Started researching them, kind of like knowing what they do, and then after that, I just started going to those companies on LinkedIn, pulling up that people
mhm,
tab, and I started just strategically networking with different account executives at those companies.
mm,
So intro messages, follow up messages, informational interviews. Started kind of like talking to these people that some of them I knew, maybe some that I didn't, and I just started kind of getting to know them, what they did, what was their day of age of working in a tech sales role, and I found it pretty fascinating. I was like, wow, like this is really cool. Like this sounds like a really great opportunity. And so I did that with a couple different reps at different companies, and was able to kind of get my foot in the door with some really cool companies. And a lot of that was because I actually connected with alumni. And so
uh,
if you have an opportunity to connect with like alumni of your university, or if there's a certification program you did and other alumni that did that, like that's the first people that I'd probably reach out
mm,
to because they're actually really willing to help you. So that was always my approach when I first started networking, was connecting with alumni. If I couldn't get through alumni, then I would just do cold, networking outreach, which still works if you're really strategic with it. And so networking was pretty big. And then after that, once I started trying to get my foot in the door, started like generating like initial interviews, I kind of crafted a really compelling story of like why tech sales was like a good transition for me from what I was doing. And I
mhm,
think this is a really big thing you have to be intentional about, because nowadays everyone wants to work in tech sales, right? Everyone wants a tech sales role, but you have to have a really good story of like why tech sales. So for me, I was like, you know what? Like, this is a really cool opportunity to like, grow professionally. It seems hard. It seems challenging. I love a good challenge. I want to do something kind of hard. And
mhm,
honestly, it's going to push me socially, intellectually, and financially. And I was pretty adamant and determined about doing that and making that happen. And so they saw that I was also like very relentless. They saw that I was very motivated, which I think was a pretty big move for me as I was telling my story, like the why of sales, why tech sales, why this company. All those things kind of meshed into, having them be like, okay, like, yeah, like he doesn't have tech sales experience, but he does have a passion for the industry. He has a passion for sales. We can tell that he has performance results. Let's at least talk to him, right? Let's at least give him a shot. So
right.
I think that's a really important thing, is that you have to have a really strong why tech sales, or like why tech selling role, which is really important. And then after that, once I kind of had that dialed in, I got really good at understanding like what questions I was going to be asked. So I started doing a lot of account executive interviews. I knew the questions that were going to be asked. And so it's just a matter of starting to get prepared for those, right? So next step was that I relentlessly practiced and like showcased my previous sales results, right? I got really good at telling stories of how I started in a role and how I was able to achieve results really fast, or like ramp up really fast, or, close big deals, or, take minimal, information and produce awesome, outcomes. And so I just got really good with a couple stories and telling those stories, which is really impactful, right? Because people remember stories rather than you just telling them things you did in the role.
Love
So got some really good stories I built up. And then after that, there was one company that really kind of caught my eye, and I kind of just went all in with that company. So that
Mm.
was the other next step after that. So I started networking with a bunch of people in that company, and essentially I networked with like 7 people internally at that company, not just
Nice.
in sales, but in other departments, right? So whether it was like rev ops, marketing, sales, like I just started connecting with a bunch of people, asking about the company, the role. And this was a startup, so I felt like it was a little bit
Mm.
easier to do. People were a little bit more welcoming, versus maybe bigger tech. Sometimes it's harder to like, get people to get back with you and stuff. But
Sure.
this is more of a startup feel. And yeah, I networked with 7 people there and just kind of like built up these relationships with them. So once I started interviewing with that company, people started to champion for me. They'd say, "Oh
Mm.
yeah, I interviewed Dallin," and then someone would say, "Oh yeah, I just talked to Dallin. He talked to me the other day, and it said X, Y, and Z, and yeah, he seems really cool. Like, he seems awesome, right?" So I had all these people kind of championing for me, and kind of getting my foot across the line there, and then. Yeah, and then right after, like through 2 or 3 interviews, right after that, I met with a sales manager, director of sales, and like a VP of sales, and then essentially got an offer after that. So,
Wow.
which is pretty exciting. So that was kind of like my story in a nutshell, and how I kind of made the transition, how I made it happen. But I think the key was really just kind of being very clear and finding strategic context that you could help build a case for you to make that transition and make it happen, essentially.
Wow. So it was probably like 5 minutes here. If you go back, you're gonna hear a master class of how the right way to land a job in tech sales. Dallin started networking, and then he crafted his story really well. He was really good at telling, his past stories, numbers, and other things. And then he really got really laser focused in one organization. And the more he networked, the more people were willing to help him. And did you find that role online, like on LinkedIn, or did someone with I believe what's the organization? How did you find that specific role? Was that a friend?
Yeah, so I think it was posted on LinkedIn, but what's really cool about this story is that like I never applied first. I never applied
Mm,
online first for the role. I
nice.
knew the associate that I knew that was a sales manager of the team I joined. We actually went to college together too.
Mm,
So we had that commonality, we had that going for us. And I just told him, I was like, "Hey man, like I've been networking with other companies. Like this seems like a really cool opportunity. I'd love to learn more about Workstream."
nice.
And we just started chatting and kind of building some rapport there. And he said really good things. Like he said awesome things. And yeah, and then I didn't apply until I started really interviewing. So they're just like, "Hey, like throw in your application just so we can track your status and see where you're at," which
Yep.
is pretty cool. And I think that's another kind of thing that's unique about my story, is that every single like position I've had since college, I've never had to apply first. I've always just kind of gone through that back door of like working with people, kind of like
Nice.
getting to know them, being more interested in them. And then I found that the more interested I got in them and their interests, what they do in their role, what their company does, inevitably, eventually, the conversation kind of came back to me and them wanting to help me kind of like get my foot in the
Mm,
door, right? Which was, I felt like a pretty cool experience. And that's exactly what happened with Workstream, essentially. I started networking with more people. I had an account executive that I was networking with and saying like, "Hey, like, let me toss your name in for an interview. Let's get you an interview." And I didn't even know the guy, right? Which is pretty cool. I was like, "Yeah, like this is awesome. Let's do it." You know what I mean? Like that'd be really great.
That's awesome. That's another really great hacking here. A lot of the positions, they're not even posted most of the time, and then you want to get ahead of when before it's posted. So by networking with the right people, and even the people that are not related to sales in the organization as a whole, you get ahead of the game. So that's what Dallin did. It is an amazing story. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone can network effectively like you did. So it's definitely a skill that I'm pretty sure you're teaching other people how to do right now.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So like that was amazing. I know you worked on a work stream and then you work in different startups. And you mentioned that you never had to apply. Can you tell a little bit more how I see I have a LinkedIn open right here. You went to Weave, and then that was basically Weave. So how did you hack into Weave? Was that like were you doing basically the same? Was that a step up? Was that something that you got recommended to apply for? How was the process of getting to that organization?
Yeah, so let me kind of tell you a little backstory behind that. So the story I just told about me breaking into tech sales, unfortunately, like 6 months into the role, they decided to go a different direction as part of a strategic shift in business,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually dissolved my entire SMB team of
Oh.
account executives, and they laid off like 30 others, which was super unfortunate. So I
Mm-hmm.
just broke into tech sales, and I was super psyched, doing pretty well at getting started, and then let go like 6 months later. And so I went on the hunt again for another tech sales role, just where I was based out of here in Utah. And yeah, I just kind of kept that motion going of like networking, like connecting, like, being active on LinkedIn. I think that was actually a really key point of like my success of landing at Weave was I got active, networking. I started
Mm-hmm.
posting. I started making some posts on LinkedIn and commenting. And I made one post that actually did pretty well. It reached like a ton of people, and I got lots of shares, lots of engagement. And I had somebody reach out from Weave to me, another alum of the college I attended. So you've seen a common theme here, right? So like if you can work through
Mm-hmm.
people that or have some sort of commonality, if you guys attended the same college, or if you guys worked in the same industry, if you guys worked for competitors, like usually like people know, and want to work with people that have like a similar commonality, or if you guys like basketball, if you guys, have something in interest, really anything you can kind of build on that. Usually those people are willing to kind of go above and beyond for you. So I actually had an alum of my university. He shot me a DM on LinkedIn and was like, hey, like, Weave is hiring for account executive roles. The OTE is great. Benefits are awesome. Like, let me know if you want me to refer you. I was like, oh yeah, that'd be awesome. Man. I've heard great things about Weave. Let's go and get that set up. And so he just shot over my resume and like referred me to the hiring team, and then they reached out to me, right? So I didn't have to even apply there, right?
Nice.
Initially, yeah, which is really cool. So yeah, and then long story, short there, I just went through the hiring process, did the same exact thing, which I mentioned earlier. Just started networking, preparing my answers, getting really good at telling stories, and got really good at following up these people. And because what was interesting was that I got to the end of the interviews, and
Uh-huh.
they said they wanted to really kind of like bring me on, but there wasn't a position open at the time.
Okay.
I was like, oh, dang it, like that stinks, right? So I just kept like that relationship, right? I maintained that connection where I kept kind of following up and kept connecting with the recruiter, and eventually, I on one of my follow ups, she's like, "Oh yeah, like someone actually just left. Like, let's see if we can kind of like bring this up to our directors there at Weave and see if we can get you a position." I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome, because I was still job searching, right? I was still kind of on the hunt, and so yeah, I mean, after a couple follow ups there and kept kind of like building that, maintain that relationship with the recruiter, she ended up actually like offering me a role and sent over an offer letter, which is really cool at Weave.
Wow, wow, wow. Amazing. So another great insight here, everyone. He went through the entire interview process, networked like crazy, knew what he was doing, got to the end, and then the offer wasn't there at that time, right? But I mean, the recruiter know him, everyone knows him inside of the organization. So when the right position pops, what they're gonna think, right? And especially when Dallin is like following up and then being the top of of the process. That's just a natural. Like it happened to me almost every single time I got an offer. It was almost like that. Then got to the end, the offer wasn't right away, and in fact, with my last role at Microsoft, I got denied, and then I reapplied, and the same hiring manager, she hired me, sorry, because it wasn't just the right timing. But then she got really excited that I reapplied, and a lot of people give up at that point, right there. A lot of people give up. They just, you know, they take personal, or they're like, well, they didn't like me, or this role's not for me. And the people who continue are the people who actually get the offers, right? So thanks so much for sharing that. It was a really really cool story. You mentioned you talk a lot about being really good at telling your stories, your sales stories. So let's say if someone um, is listening to this right now and they're not the greatest right at telling stories, or they don't have that many like sales experience, or they might be thinking like, oh, you know, I never knock doors, or I don't know exactly what to do. Is there any recommendations that you can give to them to come up with those stories, and then give it a try, be ready?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the really cool thing about storytelling is that, believe it or not, it's very, very impactful. The better you can get at like telling stories, your personal story of like why sales and how you were able to get results in a role that was somewhat correlated with sales, the higher chances of getting hired, right? So a couple resources. I mean, a big thing is that if you just go online and search like star story formatting, how to answer those questions. There's so many resources online. There's so many videos online that can show you how to effectively go through the STAR format, right? Which is telling a story based on the acronyms of a situation, task, action, and result. That's what STAR means. And so that's really kind of foundation to telling good stories of that is that STAR concept. And then second piece to that is really kind of just going through your previous experiences with a fine tooth comb and pulling out some ways that if you weren't in a direct selling role, for example, I've worked with people that, that have worked in maybe retail or have worked in logistics, and doing those roles, and those are just a couple examples, but doing those roles, there's a selling component to it in some sort of way, whether you're selling your customer on why we need to do more, loads, or you're in retail, you're trying to push more product to a consumer of, buying more clothes, or, buying more products for, their home, anything like that. Those are transferable. And you just got to kind of like go through those experiences and think about, okay, was there a time that I produced X amount of revenue, X amount of results, X amount of outcomes that helped our team goal, or helped our company, helped our overall like revenue goal, or something like that? Or you made certain calls, or you did certain email sequences, or anything like that, just anything that correlates to sales in a tech sales role, and telling a really cool story behind that, and then always ending with the result being that you're ending with the outcomes, right? So after you share your story, end with the impact you did and the impact you had at contributing in your role, and quantify that, right? So tell them how much money you helped generate, how much you assisted in building revenue, how much you actually built pipeline, like put a number to that. Because that's the other thing about tech sales in general, is that it's always numbers based, right? You're always being measured on numbers, your inputs, your quotas, your quarterly quotas, your quarterly numbers. It's all about numbers. And so these people you're interviewing with, they want to hear numbers, right? They want to hear these quantifiable metrics. So I'd say like that's a really important thing. You can't leave out when you're telling these stories and when you're crafting these stories is end with how did you really leave a significant impact by ending with those quantifiable and key metrics, essentially.
Awesome. So start, everyone, make sure your stars are aligned. And what kind of stories you need to tell. It's tech sales. It's about the money. At the end of the day, you need to show what kind of results, what kind of impact you have done, so they can see your potential, right? So I can clearly see at Dallin that you're super good at interviewing, super confident, which is one of the things that it's really important in sales in general. And I can see why you're now teaching other people how to do it. So tell us a little bit more about what you do now, and what kind of people do you help? And so maybe someone's listening here right now that might be wanting to reach out.
Yeah, definitely. So earlier this year, I actually launched this business, and the business is Revit. That's the business name. And essentially, what I do is I help people with like no experience, like no degree, no certifications, to like break into tech sales. And
Yes.
so I've been doing that for about 8 or 9 months now, and it's been awesome. It's been really cool. It's been really fun to see people that don't have this traditional sales background break into a tech sales role. Typically, it's entry level. So I work with a lot of sales development representatives, business development representatives, which is really cool. And I've also worked with some AEs as well, which is awesome. And so, but primarily I work with like mainly people trying to break into tech sales. So that's typically like SDRs. And what I do essentially is I help them everything from like their resume all the way into like interview prep, like salary negotiation. If they want to do some tech sales training, like some basics that we can do that. But essentially, that's what I do is just really kind of providing a strategy, an outline, and a process for them to be really successful in their job search, searching for like a tech sales role.
It's awesome. That's really good, and it's super needed. One of the reasons I created this podcast is because a lot of people they're not even aware of all the opportunities that is out there. The SaaS, this sales motion industry it's fairly new, probably 20 years old. So a lot of people they're going to school, they're going to sell. Sometimes they don't even know about tech sales. So how can they find out more information about you, Dallin? I know you're on LinkedIn all the time, and they can connect with you on LinkedIn. Is that a specific like course or anything that they can sign up? How that works, the process for them to learn more about Revit?
Yeah, definitely. So I have, my LinkedIn. That's pretty much like one of the main landing pages there. I do have a website, it's revitsuccess.com. And then I do have a call, like a link that you can like book a call with me, like a clarity call, just to kind of see like, hey, like what are you wanting to achieve? What does that look like for you? And so that's all on my LinkedIn. Essentially, if you just go to my LinkedIn page, it's all there.
Nice. And if I were you, if you want to get into tech sales, follow Dallin. I follow Dallin, and every single day he drops amazing content.
I appreciate that.
And people that I coach as well, I tell them, hey, there is a lot of people doing what I'm trying to do as well, and then follow their instructions because everyone has a different perspective, different background, different like stories, and everything adds up, right? So I'll highly recommend you to follow Dallin. Amazing story, Dallin. He went from this door-to-door sales, and then you got involved with you mentioned notes and things that you're selling for mortgages, I believe, and then got your first job, second job in tech sales. Now you're helping other people transition to tech sales. That's really awesome. If you haven't listened to the entire podcast, go back to the beginning. There is so many nuggets here and hacks that he just explained. But what resonated for me the most was his ability to network and his confidence in telling his stories, and then being in front of the right people, right? So if you can master those two, you're like halfway into tech sales. Thanks so much, Dallin, for your time. I really appreciate it. I know it took a couple of tries for us to get you here on the podcast, but you're super busy, Dad, and building a business and doing all sorts of things. So thanks so
No, I
much.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, no, it was great. Yeah, it's awesome to connect with you. And yeah, you're doing great work. Yeah, I love your LinkedIn posts. I love all the things that you're doing, and excited to collaborate and team up and work together. So
That's awesome. All right, everyone. This is the end of the podcast today. Thanks so much for joining.
all righty, take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Tech Sales Funnels podcast, where we crack the code and uncover the strategies to break into tech sales. If you found value in today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to hack their way into this exciting career. Remember, hacking into tech sales isn't just a goal, it's a mission. Let's keep hacking, learning, and winning together. Catch you next time.